think that's what's neat about your aptitudes is that it helps take this tyranny of choice, a million options. You can be anything. And it says, well, you can be anything if you really want to work at everything, but why don't you look here first in this subset of things and we can, start exploring there versus being overwhelmed by, just whatever you want to do or what do you think you want to do? These open-ended questions are just not helpful.
As a high school educator, one of the biggest questions we ask students is usually one of the hardest. What do you want to do with your life? How do you want to change the world? But the problem with that question is we ask those students to choose a future before they really know who they are.
I think in this idea of, follow your passion, the right thing is to help people understand to bring passion to their lives, not follow some unknown passion that they haven't ever discovered or understood about themselves in the first place.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education podcast, powered by YouScience. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
Welcome to this episode of the Disrupt Education podcast. I am Peter Hostrawser. That is Alli Dahl. No chickens today, Alli. I don't see chickens today right now. So how you doing?
I'm good. The chickens are in the backyard, free ranging, enjoying life, enjoying the summer. Life is good. Summertime is wonderful. Before we jump into this, this is a conversation I know I've been waiting to have for a long time. And, I like to set the stage for our listeners that this episode and everything is kind of born out of what you and I experienced last summer in 2025, when we have a student summer series. But last year's student summer series took us in a place that we felt like we needed to help the students that were on the series because they were all post college, not just post high school, post college. And many of them felt like they were unprepared or that their career shifted from where they had gotten a degree and they didn't really know next steps. And so we were like, that led us into the fall and everything we've been doing in the last year because of those conversations. And now we're kind of changing the script for this summer and trying to show, what does it look like when a student has purpose and direction, knows their strengths before they graduate high school.
Yeah.
And that's where this summer has led us. And so we're very excited to kind of have more conversations around that.
I go back to the conversation in that series of college plus. I had to go all the way through post-secondary, get some sort of degree or certification and still figure out who I was and where I fit in. So that, I think, was a big key for us. Again, as a high school educator, one of the biggest questions we ask students is usually one of the hardest. And I don't know, what do you want to do with your life? How do you want to change the world? But the problem with that question is we ask those students to choose a future before they really know who they are. The first question shouldn't be, what do you want to become? It's probably should be, how are you naturally wired and maybe contribute? Who are you? But that idea is the center of our conversation today with Betsy Wills, the author of Your Hidden Genius, because education has spent decades helping students find opportunities, but what happens when we help students discover themselves first? Welcome to the Disrupt Education podcast, Betsy.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here with both of you today.
So for our listeners, I know I gave you a quick little cap there, the book. Can you tell our listeners who you are and what you're all about?
Well, I am the author of Your Hidden Genius, and I wrote that book that was born out of my involvement with YouScience, which has been a primary focus for me since 2010 when I was the co-founder of the platform with the team there. And, many have gone down many roads since personally, but this has been a passion of mine to just spread the word about the importance of knowing yourself through understanding your innate or natural abilities. I think that the work they do is key. And I think, if I had to sum it up, I think YouScience brought career guidance and career management for all ages out of the Stone Age into the modern age by using objective assessments to help people really discover before they got started who they are and what their possibilities are.
100%. Peter and I both taken the aptitude and interest assessments, and not only did it like affirm some of the things we've discovered about ourselves in, our professional lives, but it also pointed us into areas that's like, oh wow, I knew I was good at that. I didn't have the verbiage for that. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. It would have transformed me in high school. I mean, like, I had confidence in just the path I was pursuing, but it was kind of blind. It wasn't guided by, like, I didn't really know who I was or like what I was innately good at. I couldn't speak to that. So I know that it has unlocked stuff for us and for students who have taken it and people we've talked to over the last year. So to kind of, like, we're all bought in, like, to
My
it.
kids have taken it. So
Yeah,
Right.
right. So I want to know from your perspective, like being the co-founder, and you've been in this work for a long time, right? Like, and just the idea with, your hidden genius, like, why is it that, like, it's kind of like the wrong question to ask kids, like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
What should we be asking instead?
Right. Well, let me back up and say, I took the aptitude assessment when I was 32. And so I think the bottom line is all of us at one time or another, or many times continually, will have this nagging feeling like I'm not really fulfilling my potential. And that's natural, that's normal. And there's never too late to understand what your aptitudes are, because of course we know they don't change after puberty. But the question of, what do you want to be when you grow up? I think in this idea of, follow your passion, the right thing is to help people understand to bring passion to their lives, not follow some unknown passion that they, haven't ever discovered or understood about themselves in the first place. I think the education system in general, at one point or another, kicked nature to the side in favor of nurture. Okay, so we've had this nature versus nurture debate for a long time. And nurture, of course, is critically important, but we sort of glossed over trying to understand people's individual natures. And that's really what aptitudes are. As you know, they're the seeds of our skills. And that those seeds, when we add learning and practice to them, grow and flourish. But we all have a different package, if you will, of seeds. So that's really the key thing, is stepping back instead of marching towards college or a certification or some kind of job. We're really in a hurry to do that in the education system. Not that it's not well-intentioned, but we really need to slow this down and give people the tools to understand themselves so that they're equipped all through life to, take these pivots and what the world throws at us, which is always something new.
The nature versus nurture is spot on. In today's day and age, as a secondary educator, I will tell you, I took this test in my 50s.
Okay. No,
Right?
I mean, it's great. Yeah, my book talks about all kinds of people up to their 80s, actually.
So,
yeah.
and I always tell my listeners, our listeners, yeah, I know I don't look 50. I get it. Thank you. But
I was going to say 38. Yeah.
But I do, I happenstanced into like what I do. Like a producer director was one of my high aptitudes, and interests crossover areas. And my first piece in my first bachelor's degree was in broadcast journalism, behind the scenes producing. It was kind of weird and shocking to see, but I also saw other things, even at this age. So, I mean, I somehow discovered that passion, right? Like, hey, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a radio broadcaster for a while until I saw how much they get paid, and that was not a good thing. But it was somehow I discovered that passion, but I still wasn't even like confident about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Having your aptitudes, confirms things.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, I mean, when we uncover what your aptitudes are, with the YouScience assessment, it should not come as a shock or a surprise what they are. I mean, of course, some you may discover like that you had no idea, but most of them are like hinted at, maybe, things you did. It all kind of makes sense, but it is that permission slip to go on and use it, or that you're on the right, this is a real fit for you. And so often, I think we discount things that come easily to us, and because the world tells us, you're not going to be paid to do that, maybe, or there's going to be someone better than you. But the truth is that unique set of aptitudes that you have, and need to be heard, and who knows where they can take you. So I'm so glad you had those confirmed with your results.
No, yeah, it was, and now that you say it, I mean, I usually have it up next to me, but I looked over it actually this morning, and there was a lot of management in there, and there's a lot of, and I'm a teacher, and I'm an educator, which actually was kind of second tier, which is interesting, but I'm building programs, so it does come out, and it does give you more of, like, I love that permission. It's a permission slip to do that, kind of like. How that was just happenstance, right? So somehow I figured that out in maybe a course or two where I figured those things out. But in your mind, like, so how can following a passion actually be bad advice if a student doesn't understand their strengths?
Well, I don't think it's bad to use the term passion, but I think it's been overweighted. That's what I would say. Because as you know, as educators, we really have an exposure gap in our country. We don't have a talent gap. Let me tell you, there's so much talent in all these schools. They're incredible. But we do have this tendency as parents, for example, and I'm guilty of it, to sort of pigeonhole or place our children a bit too early. And we're influencing our children, based on what they've been exposed to. So if your next door neighbor, works in a certain career, maybe they know a little bit about that. The parents' careers. My first career aspiration was I wanted to be a nun. Okay. I loved the outfits. They were so good, black and white. The music was good. I had a name picked out, Sister Merry Christmas. I mean, it was all, but I mean, I was taught by nuns and I loved them. They were my heroes. And so, I quickly got over that when I found out some things that, you couldn't do as a nun. But nevertheless, that's really exactly how people end up in these spots that they maybe, are leaving a lot on the table. I think that's really what happens is, you might be perfectly okay in a job that you choose early, but what have you left on the side? There could be tons of things. So I think that's where the slowing down and the understanding of self, and then getting a lot of exposure to what your possibilities are is the benefit of knowing your aptitudes and the possibilities that are embedded in them.
I'm sure you have so many stories about, how aptitudes have unlocked, pathways or a purpose for a young person. And one of the things that we saw in particular last summer was that, and just in having conversations from that series with students that kind of felt like school didn't help prepare them for what they were good at, or knowing that. How have you seen the conversations change for young people in particular from, I didn't really know what I was good at. School never told me what I was good at. It was only like what you're not good at, right? Like it feels like the conversation can be like, oh, well, you're not good at math, or I'm not good at math, or I'm not good at school. I'm not good at test taking, like whatever it is, versus the pros I see for, aptitudes and figuring out your hidden genius is that you learn all the things you're good at. So I'm, in your time, what have you kind of seen, story or two?
Yeah, there's obviously many things, but I'll tell you just a couple of themes. And you sort of touched on one, which was, math. I mean, you were a physics teacher, right, Alli, or physics and chemistry?
Chem and physics, yeah.
Which is also a scary area for a lot of people and kind of connected to math as well. But, when we assess people's, math ability, I guess, or math aptitudes, oftentimes people are surprised at their scores. I cannot tell you how many people were like, wait, what? Me? And you're like, well, yes. And because one of the things we assess is applied math, and applied math is practical math, statistics, trend analysis. Anytime you put a dollar in front of a number, it's usually applied math and business math. And so people who have been formerly afraid of pursuing things like accounting or bookkeeping or, even programming kind of look at that and they go, wow, you mean I could possibly do that? I'm no good at math, I thought. Could be a bad math teacher sometimes, or the way math is taught, or it just doesn't work for them. Yep. So, I've had one woman come, I was in finance, working in finance, and a woman had taken the YouScience assessment in high school, and she found out I had been involved in it earlier. And she came up to me, and she goes, my whole choice of becoming an accountant was because I saw that I could do it. There was a possibility for me. Now, just because she had a math ability didn't make her an accountant, but it gave her the confidence and the permission to see herself in a different light. But the number one thing I think that, or the most common thing that we see are people who have spatial ability. They think in 3D. I don't know how either one of you found your scores to be, but you're in the center, like a space.
About what I expected.
Okay, and what about you? Do you remember, Peter, with you?
Yes, I'm a little bit more on the 3D side, I'll say. Yeah.
So school does not use this or appreciate this until it is far too late for so many people. And I think if there's one transformative thing YouScience has done, is it's uncovered for people, hey, you maybe think in 3D for some people. And that is a fork in the road of opportunity where if you have that, it's like an itch that needs to be scratched. It needs use, and it needs a career that uses it. So whether it's working as a mechanic or working with a physical product or working as an architect or an engineer, there's so many different careers that involve 3D visualization that are opened up to someone. And if you let them know this early enough, they can design their pathway to, prepare themselves for programs for certification or for higher ed that really make use of that. But also a lot of 3D visualizers find the school setting, traditional school settings, like more favoring abstract thinkers or space planners like you are, Alli, where, you're learning concepts and, modeling ideas. It's very abstract in nature, the lecture versus the lab, and so it's really important. There's researchers at Vanderbilt who've been studying this for decades, but I don't think school has really caught up yet to the importance of identifying 3D visualization early enough. So that's another aptitude I'd say that can be a game changer for people.
That's big because I know I have two children. Both have taken this, and yeah, my son is way on the 3D side. Like and he actually works on, in the automotive industry, working on cars, and he has his own. So it makes so much sense. And the funny thing is once he got a taste of that in school, nothing else started to matter that much, right? Like, so I think that's an interesting switch here. My daughter's more analytic, but she's also a creative, so she's got a pretty good mix, I would say.
Yeah.
But my son, I do remember, and I think, not to say COVID was a big excuse or anything, but it was an amplifier of things. And right when my son was a sophomore, going in to the automotive classes and stuff, after he took one as a freshman early and loved it right away. So he went into the second one, and then COVID hit, and then it was it didn't really matter because it was all online and there was no really tangible pieces there. I'm interested in understanding. So once somebody sees this and they want to start building their path and designing their own, there's a link here that's missing between aptitudes and basically pathways and counseling and the way school does it. School's you have to go these areas.
Well,
so yeah, talk a little bit about that because we had Jason Van Nuss and Danny Natter on here. Danny's a counselor who talked a lot about like the counseling systems and things like that, where students take advantage, but of their own like aptitudes and go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, our model just isn't like that, is it?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think it is. I mean, I think there are certain schools that track you early enough to do the things, and get more exposure to it. But just the knowledge that you know, are someone who would enjoy working in some kind of field that has the 3D nature gives you like this whole set of possibilities to explore, like we said. And there are, classes and there are hobbies that they can pursue at that time to really see, do I like, construction or, various things that they can try out on their own. I know my son also is a 3D visualizer, and I mean, he was building the Taj Mahal out of Legos and playing Tetris. And, those were the early clues that this was coming out. So, changing how the schools approach it, I don't really have the answer there, but I do think it's funny because once you get to higher ed, though, they want to track you immediately into certain specialized coursework, whether it's certification or not, that really demand that 3D thinking, like engineering or product design, graphic design. I mean, there's so many things. So I don't know why high school doesn't, prime you for that exactly, but understanding that you have that should make you be exploring those programs for your next step, no matter what.
We just want to pause right here and share a little bit more about YouScience.
Well, instead of us actually talking about it, Alli, why don't we just roll clips of guests speaking about it? Sound good?
That was awesome.
All right, let's roll these.
We really had to say that was where we brought in YouScience, intentional planning, so that no matter who they spoke with, whether it be their counselor, whether it be one of our CTE coordinators, whether it be one of our programs that were coming in to help, that they were the ones saying, hey, this is what I see myself. This is what I'm good at. These are my strengths. This is how you can help me. Our student outcomes started to change where we never guessed they would. Our failure rates went down.
So when I ran into YouScience and kind of started digging into the evidence-based research that both the interest and aptitude side of YouScience sits on, I thought, this is it. This is how we make college not a very expensive career exploration for students. This is how we get kids in the right field.
What about someone who's an engineer and they say, but I really don't want to go to college? Well, YouScience can do that little subtle shift away from engineering and just say, well, what about mechatronics and PLC technicians? So it allows you to pinpoint where a student may feel comfortable, and you're not just guessing.
Well, there you have it, Alli. This is what people on our podcast say. We don't need to say it again and again.
Everybody who brings up YouScience, even the messages and the conversations we have outside of the podcast, they all go back to everything you just heard and more.
Exactly. Hit up youscience.com/disrupt education -podcast. Basically, you'll see how YouScience Brightpath uses data, aptitude, insights, and real-world connections to close the career exposure gap. Just request a demo there. Tell them you heard about them on Disrupt Education Podcast. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Reach out today.
I've shared this story, I think, once before, but it's so relevant. So I was pre-dental for a very long time, up until my junior year of college. I was like president of the dental club and like very involved. Had applied and had taken the DAT, the dental aptitude test, which is equivalent to the MCAT, and like rocked out on all of the sections except for 3D visualization.
Right.
And I did okay, just like, right. I would say average, maybe even a little below average, right? And I was like, this seems to be like the most important part of dentistry. And I'm just finding out now that this is like the weakest part of my innate ability. And there was a couple other things that led to me changing from wanting to be a dentist. But one of them was like, I literally had been pre-dental and talking about being a dentist for like 6 years at this point, to only realize like that is not what I want to do.
So, well, I mean, that just makes me, my heart stops for you, I have to tell you, I wanted my daughter to be an orthodontist because when she was little, she brought home these sets of teeth that, from like, art class. And I thought, oh, she's going to be an orthodontist. I mean, I made the mistake of applying that to her, and she had no 3D visualization ability. And she also, they test in specialized situations your ability with small tools. I mean, nothing with that. And what it would be, though, is if you had become a dentist, Alli, and you could have, okay, you would have passed the test and you would have gotten there. You can do anything with practice,
Yep.
but it would still feel like an uphill battle,
Yep.
and what would you be leaving on the table is the question. So I would never say that knowing your aptitudes is a dream killer for people, because if you really want it, you can do it. We can do anything with practice, but it's actually more about what you're not doing. And I'm so glad you made that pivot, because you would have, it would have taken more time and you would have had to think about it a lot harder.
Yeah.
And here you are now. So, I'm glad it worked out, but that's
did.
a
It's like, no, but like the pivot was so good for me. But it's like in hindsight, looking back,
you wish
like
you'd known earlier. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Or to your point, like I studied for that particular section of the test the longest, worked the hardest for it, and so then to only score, like I said, it was like drastically lower than my other ones. It was like, wow, okay, like I would have to work really, really hard at this. And then one of my best friends, who is a dentist, she got like almost a perfect score on that.
It was like sailing for her. No big deal.
Exactly. Like didn't study for it. Like she's like, oh, this is the easiest section for me. So that I just remember having that conversation and being like, that would be the most challenging part of dentistry for me. And the mouth is 3-dimensional, so it would have required a lot more attentiveness to that part.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't work on my teeth, but no, but what is, this brings up another story. I had somebody, I worked with who was an accountant, actually got a master's in accountancy and went to work for one of the big four accounting companies. So he powered through accounting, and anybody can work hard and anybody can get through, not anybody, but you can get through things. And he got to that job and he said every day on the job, he was like, there were these people sitting next to me who were like so jazzed about the tax code change, and they were like loving it and the nuances. And he goes, I just felt like I was like left out, and they seemed to get things so quickly. And I was just, felt like a fish out of water. I was competent, and he said, but I saw when it's easy for someone, how much they not only did well at it, but they loved it. It's that satisfaction, not being exhausted every day or burn out. So he pivoted, and now he's running a dumpster supply business and killing it. I mean, he works with a 3D. He was a 3D visualizer, so he likes having a physical product, and they deliver dumpsters to construction sites, with an app and the whole thing. And he did the marketing and the 3D and just doing so well. But the accounting degree he did find has helped him in his business. And so I think what's interesting is to say, never throw the baby out with the bathwater. Every experience we have can be additive, but we should always be angling towards the things that, we find satisfaction rather than frustration.
I don't know anybody who is excited about new tax code. I would like to meet those people.
Let me tell you, there are people.
I should step back, because my accountant, when he gets so excited about like, oh, we found this and we can do that, I'm like, you are the person, right?
Yeah.
Like,
but isn't that great? That's why they make chocolate and vanilla. Yeah. 2 different flavors.
100%. So, kind of looking at this, I as an internship coordinator, I see a lot of this in our students. It's funny because it's almost like a 60-40 split. I would say that about 60% of our students are like, yeah, I kind of still want to go in this area, but, and then there's something else right now. And again, we're in our first 4 years of our internship program, but it's interesting because as I get to know students, you kind of understand maybe some of their aptitudes without testing. Right now we are not specifically testing or having our kids go through the aptitude work. But like, so you mentioned like aptitudes, we know interests change, right? Like I wanted to do X, Y, Z when I think I wanted to like be the quarterback for the Cowboys or something back in the day, right? And that constantly changes. But you mentioned like right around puberty or right after puberty is when aptitudes kind of stick. Um, when is a good time if a school district was going to start implementing
Right.
this science, the aptitude test? Is there a specific time, middle school, elementary? Do we wait till they're ninth grade? What does that look
Well,
like?
I think it has a lot to do with how school systems are set up and that what's appropriate. But aptitudes start emerging when we're about two. Okay, certain aptitudes like short-term memory. The person in the first grade whose hands up all the time because Mrs. McGillicuddy says, I told you yesterday who the first president of the United States was. Who was it? George Washington. They hear it once, they just have that recall. And most K through third grade is built on rote memorization because they're the building blocks from which we learn the next things. And so people who have short-term memory tend to enjoy school at that age and, they win, but it's not actually that important of an aptitude. And it is certainly not an indicator of quote unquote smart. Okay. So we lose a lot of talent there too, because by third grade, people are like, well, I'm not a good student. And the truth is no, 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 no. They just may need more reps to have recall. That's it. So by fifth, sixth grade, a lot of these more nuanced aptitudes, but super important ones start emerging, like inductive reasoning or reasoning skills or administrative functioning kind of skills or specific aptitudes. Even spatial starts to become really clear. So to answer your question, I think seventh and eighth grade, having a sort of a rough cut assessment of your aptitudes. I think YouScience offers a short version that you can take because you want by high school to be knowing, maybe you should be taking chemistry or prepping, for certain types of prerequisites for college programs. But maybe by 17, our aptitudes are fixed. And if you assess them at 17 or once you're through puberty, you're going to get a read that you can use when you're 34, 104, because your aptitude pattern is not going to change. So, we've tested people of all ages, and I always say there's no bad time to do it. I love it when parents take this and see their scores with their kids, because it's really all about empathy and it's about love, and not trying to see our children as a flawed version of us, which is what we all tend to do with one another. So when you understand yourself, you can really get the most out of, empathizing or understanding someone else that may not be exactly like you.
I love that so much. I need to go like on a poster, just put it up. So I wanted to ask you about like the title of your book, Your Hidden Genius. That word genius, like people might kind of like think they have to be exceptional at something. They have to be intelligent. And kind of in what you're saying, it doesn't sound like that's your framework for genius. So just so you can unpack that for listeners and people who might be kind of, like questioning that word choice, what does genius actually mean?
Right.
From your point of view?
Well, what we're uncovering again are the seeds of your skills, not the skills themselves. Okay. Skills are built on top of these innate abilities. All of us have this combination of aptitudes. And so most people's scores, when they get their scores, it looks like, if you looked at it on a graph, it looks more like a soundboard. The beautiful music is when there's combinations of things that are drivers and things that aren't drivers. So I use the example of an aptitude. This crystallizes it, I think, because it's counterintuitive for people to think like I'm good at something or I'm bad at something. No. So we test, I'm sure you both have this, I'm guessing, but idea rate. I don't know if you remember that, but it's an assessment of how quickly and easily you generate ideas. Okay. Podcasters are going to score as a brainstormer. That's the moniker we use for people who they generate ideas so fast. It's like a blender with the top off. I mean, they're just coming a million miles a minute, and you might need a little glass of something at night to put that thing down, just to calm it down. So marketers have this, teachers have this, journalists have this, actors have this, salespeople have this. You don't want your pilot or your surgeon to have this, okay? So when I say not having an aptitude as a driver is what unlocks your opportunity for many jobs, that's what I'm talking about. So yes, that is genius. You see what I mean? So it's not the one thing, it's the combination of things. And so getting your scores is like, opening up the ornaments for your Christmas tree. There's something always there to hang and then to develop. So that's what we mean by genius. But the genius part is really uncovering it, because we all have it. The failed genius would be leaving it on the sideline to, just die and not be nurtured.
You're like nailing like who I am right now, which is hilarious because like I am an aircraft geek. I've taken some flight lessons, but I'm also, sometimes I can be a blender with the top off. So
you're like, shiny. Oh, it's that over there. That cloud's so pretty. Please don't fly. No,
it's interesting though, because
you can learn to fly. I'm just saying I wouldn't do it 24/7.
Yes. Okay. There we go. Now I have been in the cockpit of a plane and the controls and everything. But what's so funny is somehow I code switched. I don't know what happened, but the trainer next to me was like, "Look up, man. This is beautiful." And I'm like looking right at the.
You're like, no,
no, man. I got to keep the top on the blender. It's so funny. I mean,
yes, it's so true. People who score like pilots though, and surgeons like anesthesiologists, the way they train anesthesiologists, I don't know if you've heard this, but it's called it's the hygienic cockpit. They train anesthesiologists and pilots the same way to shut out everything. So sometimes with people who score like you, brainstormers, we talk about meditation as a way to help you shut those thoughts that are coming a million miles an hour out. But trust me, if you weren't doing the podcast or using that absolute ability of generating lots of ideas, you'd miss it.
Yeah.
So
I would definitely be burnt out of my job.
Yes.
I mean, because you did say it, like hobbies, that when you start to have hobbies and different things, there is an out. Like, and the first thing I thought of is my son, who's now 21 years old at the time of this recording, has had two cars. He's on his second car because he's already built the first one and he's messing around with the second one, which is very, very important. But I also like the preparation here. I know, like, as a work-based learning coordinator, right, we get a lot of students, especially younger students. And when I say younger, I work with 9 through 12. So usually like a 14, 15 through an 18-year-old. And the 13, 14, maybe even 15, even sometimes into the 16, 17 range, they're always chasing something. Now, you said anesthesiologist. That's a big, big payout. And a lot of kids, you see that big salary and they're like,
number,
yeah,
right.
I'm going to do that. Yet even knowing what you just uncovered there was interesting, because even knowing aptitude and understanding what that goes through, I mean, you can see it on YouScience. You can look it up on YouScience, and now you can start to see how you connect to that and where you need your areas of work to get into that. A lot of kids will see like those dollar signs.
Yeah.
So I think that's such a major idea when you combine this with work-based learning, where you know yourself and then you experience the world. I mean, that's like super clarity. I mean, when you're experiencing things, right?
Right. And just having all that, I'm sure, I don't know how many of your listeners know how much content is there once you've gone through the assessment, which, let's face it, is 87 minutes. I don't know if they know, I'm sure you've talked about it, but it's a bunch of small little games that you do. And they're fun. Some are fun, and some for you might feel like throwing the computer out the window, and others you'll be like, this isn't even hard. And yet the same thing for Allie might be different, which game she thought was fun or hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's by design. But once you've gone through that whole thing, it just opens up like this whole suggestion engine. And what do these people do all day? These are some jobs you might look at. And that could be at 3 a.m. I mean, I think some people don't wake up and look at their scores or what this could do for them till they're 26 years old. I mean, but it's there for you because you've taken the assessment. So you can always come back to that information and design your, next learning module around it, if you will.
You absolutely can do that. I've been doing it as I think about like, if I wanted to go into something, like I can just hop on and be like, it's fun. It's honestly like, and everyone that I talk to who has used it, or like, even like the young people, like I got a lot of nieces and nephews who take it. They're like, and Abby Cottle from last year, she says it like, wow, it was definitely not what I thought it was going to be. It was way better, like, because kids have been tested and had all these assessments. And
yeah,
they're very weary of assessments. I don't blame them. They 100%, they're awful. There's so many, just survey after survey, or it doesn't seem like meaningful or purposeful. And that's not the feedback we get with this.
Yeah, well, I'd love to tell you a little history of sort of career guidance in a way that, for years we've used as proxies for career direction, things like, Myers-Briggs or StrengthsFinder. And these are surveys. They're great. Okay. They're great conversation starters. I love it. I like horoscopes too. I like all that kind of thing, but they effectively have a survey. Think about it. It's like you tell the survey something and the survey comes back and it tells you what you told the survey. So it's like a boomerang, and that's like, I always say it's like, walking into a mirror versus through a door. Okay. And the aptitudes are this unchanging piece. They still need learning and practice on top of them, but they're reliable information that is objective, because you can't game the assessments, the games. You can't game the games. And so I think the personality assessments, surveys, the StrengthsFinder, those are really nice pieces, foundational pieces. But when you add this, it just supercharges everything. So, the reason people have sort of been weary of all these surveys, I think, is because they're sort of getting too rough of a cut of suggestions. It's sort of a generalized, hey, maybe you should be a mortician or forest ranger. And they're like, why did you say that? And it's because it's mapping to a big, huge data set that it's giving very little information. So think about online dating, how much that's changed dating using better data. Better data means better outcomes. And that's what effectively this is.
With some students, right? Like you get these assessments, and like with Peter's work with work-based learning. Okay, so a student who has this, but then sees, oh, they have an aptitude for anesthesiology. Okay, great. But then they go and experience it. They have that real world experience. They're like, this is not for me. I know, right? Like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm apt at it, but like that is so not what I'm going to be doing. So how do aptitudes and kind of real world experience work together?
Well, first of all, good job. If you go look at something and then you say, that's not for me. That's the idea of this whole thing. I always say, aptitudes are free, but motivation is sold separately, so how much, you go see something, you're like, well, that's going to be a lot of school. That's not for me, or that's going to be a lot of work. Each aptitude pattern, though, has a number of opportunities connected to it, as you know, and they can vary. Like my husband, his pattern says fine art photographer, department store manager, high-end restoration contractor, architect. And interestingly enough, he's been working as a high-end restoration architect for the last 35 years, but it pinpointed that when he took it. But the hobby now of photography is also very interesting to him. And it's exactly the same pattern as the other job. So I think that's what's neat about your aptitudes is that it helps take this tyranny of choice, a million options. You can be anything. And it says, well, you can be anything if you really want to work at everything, but why don't you look here first in this subset of things and we can, start exploring there versus being overwhelmed by, oh, just whatever you want to do, or what do you think you want to do? These open-ended questions are just not helpful.
There's no feedback, I think, a lot. I mean, especially, working in a school system, it's, I have regularly heard educators say, yeah, our kids are just surveyed to death. And they just go off into nothing. And no one really knows, well, I just took the survey. Well, what happened? Our kids want feedback, right? So
right.
I feel like they're getting that. I mean, I know I got pretty much immediate feedback with the aptitude on the YouScience piece, and then then you can even go in deeper and you're now speaking with it, right? Like it's
Right.
working with you, and
Yeah,
that's what I like about it.
Yeah, it's actionable,
Yeah.
and it's actionable. Well, here's the thing I think is wonderful about the age we live in too. It's portable. So, I don't know when your child is going to be ready to even think about this. He might be thinking about his girlfriend or his, band he's interested in. But sometime or another, it'll come to it. It might be 3 a.m. Well, they can go log in and start looking on their own instead of needing a counselor there. And it's built for that purpose. And again, that's not the end of the journey, but it's certainly, a lot better than just stuck in a counselor's office file cabinet or something like that, or dependent on some past piece of information. It's live and it's dynamic.
I feel like that's where the equity piece comes in as well, right? Like,
Yes.
like in education, right? Like, look, my dad was a teacher. My brother's in education. I had a grandmother who was in education. Like, like we know this, right? And I've had access to that career, these different opportunities, networks, etc. But there's a lot of students who don't. And
Right.
then I think, in our current situation, what I really like about this and the aptitudes and jumping in and having people take control is now it's equitable, right? Now here it is, here's your stuff, and I'm going to give you the time to go look into that. And that's what
On
I
your
really like
time.
about it.
Right. Right. Well, and the other equitable thing is, I know YouScience probably, they've published reports on this, but you find that particularly just talk about male female scores. So many women, when you just apt to measure their interest, which is that self-reported piece, which we do include, and interests are important, but again, they change.
Mm-hmm.
But if you make career suggestions just based on interest, and then you resort based on aptitudes, what we know is that, women tend to answer interest surveys at age 16, 17 in a certain way, the majority of them. And yet when you search by their aptitudes, it's like a completely different set of career suggestions that if you didn't have that now, the aptitude piece, you might be basically misguiding people. I call it career malpractice, because you're limiting them by, just focusing on what they've been exposed to as what you're suggesting for them. And I think that cuts across socioeconomic lines, not just male, female. There's just what you've been exposed to. If you see yourself only in that light, then you're really not encouraged to, find your full fulfillment.
Something that is hot topic right now is AI. It's buzzwords and people are lost in AI on some level. And just like with the jobs and automation and everything. So I'm really interested, like, why does understanding our aptitudes and strengths become even more important in an AI age?
Well, I think everybody knows this, but it bears repeating. We don't even know what the jobs are going to be anymore. So it's almost like a fool's errand to be, saying I want to be this or I'm training to be this. There are a lot of transferable skills, though. And the good news is, at least statistically, what I read, more jobs have been created each time we've had these huge technological shifts than have actually been destroyed. The nature of those jobs, though, will change. So how do I put myself into that workforce with confidence when, the job description may not even exist yet, right? So the aptitudes, again, the seeds of our skills, not the skills themselves, can be deployed in many, many different ways. So let's take that idea rate we talked about, generating lots and lots of ideas. This applies to public speaking, sales, writing, journalism, prompt creation, if you will. Think about AI prompts. Someone who can generate lots of different ways to do that are going to have a lot to draw on, for example, and so if they're trained, like take a course in AI prompting, they're going to sail, because they have that idea generation. So that's just an example. But the thing, the core basic aptitudes can be made, turned into different skills, and they should be all along the way. So I think about a friend of mine who, y'all are too young, but take graphic design. It used to be that if you were going to even print a newspaper, you had to use an X-Acto knife and cut things and lay it out on this board, and then it would go to the printer. It was a very physical, tactile kind of thing to do. And you did have to be thinking where on the page it should be or what colors it would be, that kind of thing. But there was also this tactile thing. So that part, the tactile, was eliminated when, we got into computing design. And my friend who loved graphic design, loved the tactile aspect as well as the design aspect. And she made the shift to technology to learn, to do it online and on and on and on. But she missed using that tactile aptitude. So she now started quilting. I know that sounds funny. So she needs to sleep indoors, so she does her job, and she kept learning how to apply the majority of that aptitude in graphic design. But she also started making quilts, and she's winning awards. So this is what I mean by, you have to redeploy sometimes into what the demands are for the job. And I think I want everybody to take part. Everybody's scared and nervous because we're all going to have to keep learning something new. It's just, you can't sit back, but that's never been the case.
In line with that, what do you think are uniquely human skills and abilities that you think schools should be working on cultivating more intentionally in the current age we're at?
Well, critical thinking and problem solving are the most valuable things, and communication skills. Human communication skills, articulating what you want, what you're selling, what you're talking about. I think those are really critical. But problem solving and critical thinking, that's where inventions come. You can apply that across science, across the humanities. There's all kinds of places. But I don't think it's the for example, computer programming. A lot of people, we put a big emphasis there. I don't know that that's going to be that helpful long term. I think understanding, though, how computers operate and understanding the basics of it will always be valuable. But I don't know if the hard, mechanics of it will, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You know more about, Peter and Alli, what people are actually being pressed to learn in school. I'd be curious how you'd answer that.
Yeah, I think as a work-based learning coordinator, you hit it spot on. The biggest things that our kids, students understand when they do experience an internship, a team-based challenge or something like that, is that they quickly understand that they have the technical skills to do it, usually. the deficiencies start to occur when it comes with problem solving or the communication or the teamwork and those types of things.
Mhm.
And there are ginormous gaps. You can see which students are good at what, which students struggle with what right away. I mean, let's think about it like everybody in high school, right? And Allie, we've talked to students around this where, you're on a team and there's one person who does all the work,
Oh
right?
yeah, the
So
team. There's no I in team. Yes, there
yes,
is.
there's an
Yeah,
M and an E. That's what these kids say. But
yeah,
they're not used to understanding other people's like their powers and what they can bring to the table. So they assume all the responsibility because they're afraid of a grade or whatever that result is. So that is you're spot on. And now the companies are telling us the exact same thing. I want somebody.
Mhm.
I don't want them coming and asking what to do next. I want them to
right,
figure things out, right?
right.
And yeah,
The feedback loop has to be self-driven in so
yes,
many
yeah,
ways, not this feedback hunger constantly. It's a drag on a, yeah.
exactly. What would you
I
change, Allie?
I would I always said this in chemistry class, which I know was disruptive when I was there, is that I always use my classroom as a way to help students be curious about the world around them. And I would always say, I'd be like, do you walk around asking questions, or do you just like have blinders on, just accepting what's in front of you, and challenging kids to wonder and to be creative around their thinking? And students always be like, man, that is not how science has been taught to me in the past. But it was like, I think that energy in schools, it's uniquely human and is something that it shouldn't be slept on. It should be something that can be cultivated and developed. It's just the lens in which you present it that I think is needed now more than ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also decision-making skills that I would add on to all this, how people approach decisions. And we test for that in the aptitude assessment. And again, there's no right way to approach a decision, but we do know some people go with their gut. They tend to love a fast-paced decision, something where there's a timer on. They like, but they can sometimes procrastinate or create a mini crisis because they like the thrill of making a decision under time pressure. So that's one way people do it. And then other people are way more deliberate and they can't get enough information to actually move to a decision.
Mm.
And again, that's two ends of a continuum, and neither one is wrong. But if you're on a team and you know how you make decisions and can articulate that, you're going to be much better on the team. You're not going to feel as anxious at the person who needs to make a snap decision, because you're going to be able to say, let's slow that down. I'm not ready. And the person who's trying to create the crisis or, make a decision immediately can say, I see the value and maybe we need a few more facts. And that's great. You've suggested that. I mean, that's the kind of teamwork that we need to, appreciate about each other. That is really an innate ability and all has value.
This all comes back to like I like the slowing down, right? We're so fast paced, especially in secondary education, even in middle school. Sometimes in elementary, sometimes not. But I feel like it just goes so fast, and there is no time to be bored, and that's important. We again in our work-based learning pieces, we see that. But I want to round out with a ginormous question here. Let's just say you have every single freshman in high school across America right here, and you have, up to 5 minutes to talk to every freshman right now. What would you want them to know about themselves?
Well, I would just want them to know that, well, I saw two magazine covers in 2015. It was some scientists at Harvard who were, there were two babies on Time magazine and National Geographic. They both did the headline at the same time. And it said, this baby may live to be 150. Okay. And I was like, whoa, so scientists, I think it was at Harvard, were saying they were predicting that one person every day was being born who'd live to be 150. Okay. that is a long time, and that is really and truly frightening. And I don't necessarily believe that, but the truth of the matter is life is much longer than it's ever been. And locking ourselves down too early is and cutting off our learning and exploration is the number one thing to avoid. So if I've got a room full of freshmen, I would just say, this is the very beginning of an exciting journey, and you are always going to be much more than just your job. And so developing relationships, developing hobbies, avocations, and really digging into those things and honoring them is going to be where your true fulfillment lives. Hopefully your job will give you fulfillment, but that's going to vary much more than the things that you can, make sure that you're enjoying. And these are going to be things that are driven by your aptitudes, just like your job, but you have control over those. So I would just say, know yourself first and look at the world as like a big smorgasbord and, try as many things as possible.
Love that.
Now, I just got to add in here, would you change anything with that answer for our adult listeners, those who are in their careers? Maybe they feel stuck. Maybe, they're scared to pivot, or they're hearing this and thoughts are coming up, but they're like, oh, that message was for students, so I don't need to listen. So would you change anything for our adult listeners?
I don't know how old your listeners are, but let's say they're 50. Yeah. They're probably going to be around at least another 30 years. And so the same applies to them. And I think more than anything, when I hear someone say, oh, I'd love to do that, but I don't have time, or it's too late, when someone tells me they don't have time, I just say, you don't have time to waste. And the fact is, we waste time all the time. I mean, how many, I'm doing it, just wasting time. And so I think I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. And I think you can reignite your interest in living and your relationships and your parenting style and your relationships with your boss and your husband or your partner by knowing more about yourself. So it's a jump start to huge opportunity to discover new things to do and new ways to do it.
Thank you so much, Betsy, for sharing. How can people connect with you and find the book Your Hidden Genius?
Well, yourhiddengenius.com it has links where you can buy it on Amazon or anywhere you want. I do love the fact that the book, we interviewed over 60 different people who of all ages and stages, everyone from the White House usher who manages the White House to, a person who's a dog trainer in Seattle to a race car driver in Europe. So there's stories that really give you, color around each aptitude through the book, and it's very logical. But the magic of the book is on the back of each copy, there is a sticker with a unique code so that you too can go online and take this assessment on your own time. So I love YouScience for letting me do that. So I would say, get the book and do it yourself. And you can find me on LinkedIn. Always happy when people reach out. And I just appreciate you all spending so much time with me and to hear about this. And, my life's work really has been around helping people develop. And YouScience has been just a game changer, I think, for the world and will continue to be. So thank you for supporting their work.
Yes, absolutely. And again, like as a parent, as an educator in this business, when I feel like I'm a little angry because I came in late to this, but it's here now. And I think it's not a thing. I know this helps people. This is something that really gives people that clarity and really gives them, I'm just going to go back to it, the permission slip, which I love that term, just here's your permission slip. And now you have the opportunity to go. And I just love that freedom that you're giving people. So thank you so much. The book is Your Hidden Genius by Betsy Wills. And again, Betsy, thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Disrupt Education podcast.
I've loved it. Keep doing good work.
Appreciate you. This is my side thing too. So this is something that I'm apt at. So, but I have some other ones, and Alli and I will continue to talk. Maybe we'll hint more of our aptitudes here and there, and you can get your own. It's that simple. You get a book and the aptitude test. For Alli Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrawser. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share this out, go to disrupteducationpodcast.com. And a big thank you to YouScience for helping us power these discussions. We'll see you next week on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Disrupt Education podcast. If this episode sparked an idea, challenged your thinking, or helped you see education differently, well, that's exactly why we're here. We're highlighting real stories and bold ideas shaping the future of learning. A quick thank you to our sponsor, YouScience Brightpath, the next generation platform helping students make personalized decisions as they move from education to career. If you're serious about connecting students to real opportunity, head to youscience.com/disrupteducation-podcast. Request a demo and let them know you heard about YouScience right here on the Disrupt Education podcast. For more episodes and clips and ways to connect, you can always visit disrupteducationpodcast.com. I'm Peter Hostrawser. Keep disrupting. We'll see you next time on the podcast.